Hello and welcome. It is Thursday, April 20th. I definitely know the day today. Of course, now I'm hearing feedback from my own computer. That's my fault. It is 4:20, so give me a break. But I'm ready to roll. I'm actually just high on espresso, tons of coffee, caffeinated, and ready to rock. I have my MLB best bet. We're going to go over the model. No prize picks entry today, but still, all lines are sponsored by BetMGM. For all new users, make sure you use code JBFANS. It's JBFANS. For all new users, you wager $10 on any money line on MGM, on MLB games, you will get $100 in bonus bets. It's an absolute no-brainer. Again, my picks, the model, and then we're going to welcome on 7 of our favorite MLB cappers to give their picks. There's going to be some back and forth. It's going to be a great stream. But first, remember, this is a competition, right? It's me versus everybody else. But everybody else is also facing everybody else. And a subscriber of this Twitch stream, if I win, will get World Series tickets. If I finish second, they will get a $500 cash prize. Currently, I'm in 4th place. We're going to show you the leaderboard later on in this show of kind of who's hot right now, who's not. But a lot of these guys, like when they're in the dumps, let's say they're in the red right now, they're going to get hot. These are some of the best MLB cappers I can find, and it's going to be an absolute blast. First, let's do a quick recap of how we did on, what was it, Tuesday stream, because yesterday the Just Baseball crew was at the Yankee game, so unfortunately, and there was a bunch of day games, so we didn't stream yesterday. Welcome back. We do this again every Monday through Friday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern to 6:30 p.m. Eastern. Let's do a quick recap of how we did on the stream the other day. Houston moneyline did not cash. That was a big back and forth with mid-major Matt and Javon. Unfortunately, that did not go our way, even though I was yelling at him that it would, and it bit me in the ass. We had Boston versus Minnesota. I don't know if you guys watched that game. It was one of the most horrible pushes of all time. 2-2 going into extra innings. We had under 9 runs, and 5 runs were scored in the 10th inning. Disaster, right? Absolute disaster. And the next game that we're recapping too, Miami on the money line, cash, 4-2 win by the Marlins. That was great. And we hit our prize picks entry, which was awesome, right? We had Manny Machado less than 6.5 fantasy score. A little weak single for him. He finished with 3. That was a banger. And Edward Cabrera finished with 8 strikeouts. So that was awesome. Overall, could have been such a better day if 5 runs weren't scored in the 10th inning and extra innings to push on the under. But I know a couple of you, some of you, maybe more than a couple, definitely more than a couple, only got the 8.5. So that was a loss. Unfortunately, I pushed. That's how it was tracked. But I know it was really challenging. Rough one, right? But that's baseball. That's why it's beautiful. And that's why it's a season-long thing. There's going to be some bumps and bruises. But overall, I'm very confident we're going to finish positive. And we still are positive both on stream and off stream. And we're going to continue to roll. I think it might be time to get into my pick of the day. My pick of the day is the Cincinnati Reds versus the Pittsburgh Pirates. It starts at 6:35 p.m. Eastern, and it's Luke Weaver versus Roansy Contreras. It's not the greatest pitching matchup in the world, but if you look at both offenses, you combine it with visual memory index, which we will talk about in a little while, I think this will be a lower scoring game than a lot of people think. First, I want to talk about Luke Weaver, who's relatively unknown, right? He hasn't made a start this year. We don't know his stats. You might just think he's some random pitcher, but he's not some random pitcher. He was a first-round pick by the St. Louis Cardinals, spent some time with the Arizona Diamondbacks, and we last saw him with the Kansas City Royals. He's not the greatest pitcher in the world. He grades out as kind of a replacement level, right? A 5-starter that you can throw in there. But I was speaking with my Reds guy this morning, as well as Jack McMullen. You guys know Jack McMullen from the Just Baseball show. And he said, and Jack actually watched his start because he's calling games in AAA for the Indianapolis Indians, who are the AAA affiliate for the Pittsburgh Pirates. I'm going to read you what Jack sent me. I didn't put it in my article because I wanted to kind of keep it for this stream, but here's what he said. 4 no-hit innings, 2 walks, 4 strikeouts. Fastball was at 2,400 RPMs. It was really live fastball, and the changeup worked really well off of it, and he mixed in 2 breaking balls, enough to be really effective. Now, it's a rehab start. We can't put a ton of stock into it, but what I do know about Luke Weaver is he is talented. It's just his career has not gone according to plan so far. And the great part about Luke Weaver is he should be in for a nice day because the Pirates are coming off a series at Coors Field. They just put up 14 runs in their last game. Everyone wants to jump on the over, and I get it. And it still might go over because line movement is not on our side. But what I do know is that off games at Coors Field, especially when you don't have an off day in between, visual memory index starts to kick in. If you remember, Ben Carey came on and talked a lot about it. He's our big Rockies guy. Visual memory index is basically, now there's a long-winded definition, and I recommend you look it up. But in a baseball sense is, when you're coming off a game against Coors Field, because the difference in altitude, right? Going from Coors Field, which is way up top, and PNC Park, which is around sea level. Your vision is a little bit different because the ball moves differently at Coors Field versus not at Coors Field. That's why we see pitchers, it's so hard to pitch there, right? Their slider doesn't slide as much. Their fastball doesn't have that same ride. Cutters, curveballs, changeups. All these different pitches move in all these different directions. And the Pirates, they are a young team, right? Of course, you still have Andrew McCutchen, and you still have Carlos Santana, but there's a lot of guys at the bottom of the lineup, as well as Brian Hayes at the top, who don't have a ton of experience playing in Coors Field and then adjusting off of it. And if we look at the Pirates lineup, they've been the 6th best lineup this year against left-handed pitching. They're much better against left-handed pitching. Against right-handed pitching, they've graded around league average this year, and that's even with a 5-run performance against Jose Urena. So when I look at the Pirates offense, I think to myself, all right, coming off 14 runs, we love to fade offenses like that. Coming off a Coors Field series with no off day when you got to travel from Colorado to Pittsburgh, we love fading teams like that. So then why am I not taking the Reds? Well, spoke to my Pirates guy this morning. He thinks Roansy Contreras goes wild today. Absolutely wild. He thinks he has a great matchup against this Cincinnati Reds team, where a lot of their offense comes from right-handed bats. And Roansy Contreras, he performs better against right-handed bats, right? We're looking at Jonathan India. We're looking at Tyler Stevenson. We're looking at Will Myers. Now, there's the TJ Friedels of the world. There's, Jake Fraley. There's a couple decent lefties in there that we definitely have to watch out for. But what I do know about the Reds is when you get them against a right-handed pitcher on the road, that's easily their worst split. Against righties this year, even though the Reds offense has been good overall, 92 WRC plus against right-handed pitching this season. It's not ideal. That's 8% below league average. And Roansy, he is better at home as well. Also, in Pittsburgh, it's supposed to be really warm, which normally helps the hitters, but we got east to west wind, right? And PNC Park, it already is kind of bad for home runs. It's a decent hitter's park, but in terms of those big-time blasts, it's going to be hard to hit a bunch of home runs today. So the way I think that we could potentially lose this first 5 under is if there's so many hits all over the field. But when I consider that the Pirates' disadvantage in this game is coming off Coors Field, no travel, and then you consider that the Reds, their worst split is against righties and on the road, I think a lot of those hits are going to be hard to come by, considering that both teams actually play pretty well on defense too, especially the Pittsburgh Pirates. They're a very good defensive team. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if the full game... Book It Raid, what's going on, everybody? Good to see you right now. We're just going over that first 5 under. Good to see you guys. We're going to have a great stream today. We have 7 different cappers coming on, including Krabs, including DeGen. Tons of cappers. Cannot wait to get into it. Basically, I'm just wrapping up my pick of the day, and then we're going to get into our model where we go over all the games, and it'll show you value kind of on either side, and I'll break down why I like it, why I don't like it. But just to recap, I'm on the first 5 under. We talked about the visual memory index against the Pittsburgh Pirates, how the fact that they have to travel, and then the Reds, their worst split, which basically means are they facing a lefty or a righty? They're much better against lefties. They're much worse against righties, and they're much worse on the road. Travel for both teams, even though the Reds' travel isn't much. And Luke Weaver looked really, really good in his rehab start. He's not a sexy name. I don't expect him to shut out anybody. But what I am saying is my model does see value on his over strikeouts. I think it'll be low scoring early. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes over at the end. Because my Reds guy who's talking to me about Luke Weaver, he also said our bullpen is completely trashed, right? So it could be Luke Weaver for 3, then Carter Young, who is their lefty, who I actually like against this Pirates lineup today. I know lefty-righty, you don't like to see it because the Pirates generally kill lefties, but they slotted in a couple lefties today, and I like him coming in because he's actually been a really good left-handed reliever for the Reds. So you combine that with Roansy, I think it's going to be a low-scoring game early. Wouldn't be surprised if there's runs scored late. So if it is early, and let's say we cash our bet, don't be too afraid of a live over, right? So that's the play. And now let's get into our model for today. So remember the Ballpark Pal model, it goes over different park factors, game simulations, and a matchup machine. We have, we'll go over each individual game. They simulate the games 1,000 times to show you what their implied line would be after all the simulations. And they obviously factor in park, all that kind of stuff. So let's get into the first game on the model. So the first game on the model is this Colorado Rockies versus the Philadelphia Phillies game. As you can tell, the model loves the Phillies, and you should be on the Phillies today. The only issue is with taking the Phillies is that you got to pay an insane amount of juice, like an absolutely insane amount of juice. Like laying over 210, I can't recommend it. But what I do know is that the Rockies are coming off a series against Coors. Generally, you want to fade the living hell out of that. They are not a team that you want to tail in their first game after Coors Field, especially when they don't have an off day. Now, they are facing the lefty, so it is their better split, and I'm not a huge fan of this Phillies bullpen, so I was actually leaning towards a potential over, but at the same time, the model is showing value on the under. Basically, what the model is telling us is that the Rockies are not going to score runs today. They're just not going to score runs. So consider their team total under. On BetMGM right now, I think it's around 3.5. Let me just check. Let me check on BetMGM what their team total under is, because that actually could be a pretty solid bet today. Let me see. Boo, boo, boo. Let's see. Because that's at least what I think the model is trying to tell us. Because if they like the under and they think the Phillies are just going to bum rush them, what they're kind of telling us is that the Rockies are not going to score. Yeah, the Rockies team total under is at 3.5 at -110. It's honestly not good value, but I think that's what the line is telling us. If you want to, it's just such a low margin of error, right? One home run at Citizens Bank Park, which is generally a hitter's park, could put you over the edge against a rough Phillies reliever, and Matt Strahm is not expected to go long. It's a tough game. I think the Phillies are a decently safe parlay piece. You know, I know there's NBA playoffs. I know there's NHL. I don't know shit about either. I'm a biased Knicks fan. I think we're going to win the title, and I don't want to hear anything else about it. Potentially, it could be a good lay piece. Like, I think the Phillies, they win this game 70% of the time. And right now, they're -225. I think they're pretty safe to put in something. Again, I don't like to parlay, but I think it's a very safe piece. All right, let's move on to the second game of the model. All right, we have the Los Angeles Dodgers taking on the Chicago Cubs. Unfortunately, they simmed with Jameson Taillon, who was just scratched today, unfortunately. He was just placed on the IL with a groin injury. So, unfortunately, doesn't really mean much. But what we do know is that the Cubs, at least we can look at how the model simmed the Cubs to score off the Los Angeles Dodgers, because Michael Grove will be starting here. And Michael Grove is a fly ball pitcher, and it's really windy in Chicago. But something I've learned the hard way is that wind during night games at Wrigley isn't as impactful as day games with the heat. So as you can tell by the incredibly high total of 11, which you'd never see unless there was wind blowing out, it's not as impactful. And I'm not saying play the under, especially because of the pitching change. But what I am saying is I think the total is really inflated, and the model is reflecting that too, because the model factors in the weather, right? The model has the wind forecast, and it even refreshed too. And it's still calling for the line to be around minus 107 at 9.5. Now, I'm not recommending the under because you normally don't want to bet against a game that's windy at Wrigley. But what I will say is, I don't think it's a bad bet. Like, if you're a gross contrarian, like if you love making just disgusting bets that sometimes hit, the under in this game is that play, right? Everyone and their mother's on this over. And it'll probably hit. But it might not, right? I would like to see the pitching change. I don't think the Cubs have announced the starter. Let me see if they have. It might just end up being a bullpen game. We could see Adbert Alzolay, who's kind of this... it's Javier Assad, who I kind of like. I kind of like Javier Assad. I know you look at his ERA and it's 12.46, but he is a pretty decent pitcher. I don't know if you remember, we saw him in the World Baseball Classic. It's a tough game. So let's move on to our next game on the model. What are we thinking? Padres D-backs. This game is fascinating because I was looking at playing the D-backs today. I think they have good value, right? Around plus 125. But you got Fernando Tatis Jr. coming back today, which I find pretty interesting, right? It's a really tough game. But the model loves the under, as you can tell. Absolutely loves the under with these two pitchers. They're playing in Chase Field today, which, depending on if the roof is open or closed, could impact this game in terms of how hot it is. I was just shocked, and the reason why I really wanted to go over this game with you is I was pretty surprised by it loving the under so much, considering that both Ryan Nelson and Michael Wacha have really struggled to start the year. But you're almost buying the good news, or in the opposite way. How does the Gen say it, who we will hear from in a bit? You're buying bad news, right? Fernando Tatis Jr., the line is going up. It's at 10 in some places. Could it be a sneaky under? Now, I'm not recommending it, but could that happen? I wouldn't be surprised, right? Weirder things have happened. 10 is a really high number, considering that the Padres offense has not been what we, I think, hoped it would be. And the Diamondbacks against Michael Wacha, it's tough because Michael Wacha is a very hard pitcher to cap because he either gets blown up or throws a 6-inning shutout. He's already done that this year. He either has it or he doesn't. He's a big command guy, not a big strikeout guy, but then sometimes he rattles off 11 Ks. Very tough pitcher to handicap. But what I will say is the model is showing slight value on the Diamondbacks and a ton of value on the under. But again, just because the model is showing value on the under doesn't necessarily mean I take it. But what this is saying is the under 10 is their favorite player. At least it's showing the most value. All right, Mets versus Giants. Kodai Senga against Sean Manaea. Little value on the Giants here, right? Plus 100. They think it's actually a 50-50 ball game. And we've seen a lot of line movement head towards the Giants' direction, right? We've seen a lot of line movement head towards the Giants' direction. The Mets opened at around minus 140, and now it's down to minus 120. People have started piling on the Giants because the Mets, this is their worst split. Not nearly as good against lefties as they are against righties. And Sean Manaea, but my only issue is with this game and why I don't want to play the Giants, even though showing value, Mets are against their better split. It's a sneaky dog. Giants got to travel from Miami to San Francisco without an off day. I hate doing that. Teams that got to travel across the country. And I kind of wanted to play the under, but the model has a slight lean towards the over. This game has me in a pretzel. But what I do know about Kodai Senga is he is a good pitcher, but the competition he's faced so far isn't incredible. But then again, neither are the Giants, right? But the Giants' better split is against righties. They can't hit a lefty to save their lives. Against righties, much better. It's a tough game. I'm curious, anyone in the chat, if you're on this Mets versus Giants game, selling good news. That's what it is, Sports Hub. So, what does the model have for Pirates versus Reds game that you mentioned on the Book It stream? Reds may not get a hit today on Contreras. Yeah, we could try and get it up right now for you. The model actually, it thinks the total is pretty spot on. I have it in front of me right here. Yeah, so it has the line. So it's minus 129 to go over 8.5, but plus 120 to go over 9.5. So it thinks 9 is the correct total. And it has the game around 5.1, 5.2. But the thing is, the model doesn't factor in travel, and the model doesn't factor in the Coors effect. So when I saw it was around 5.2, that it was the model thought it was about accurate, I wanted to take the under through the first 5, considering that the model doesn't account for that kind of stuff. So my producer is about to put it on screen for us. As you can tell, 4.83 to 4.69. They have the Pirates winning more of the simulations, but in some simulations. So basically, excuse me, you can tell that the Reds in some simulations won this game by a decent margin, but the Pirates won more of the simulations, right? Simulates the game 1,000 different times. And if a simulation has the Pirates winning 6 times 4-3, and then the Reds winning one of those simulations 7-2, it's going to have a different outcome, right? So, has the Pirates winning, says there's a lot of good value on the Reds, and thinks the total is accurate, but considering that the model doesn't account for travel or the Coors effect, I like the under. But again, the model isn't end-all be-all, right? You use it as a tool to kind of point you in a direction rather than just blindly tail it. It'll show value on a ton of different games, and you kind of use your prerogative on what you think you should bet. So that's kind of what we're dealing with here. So it basically thinks it's priced correctly, but doesn't factor in those things, so that's why I'm on the under. But those are all the games for today, right? That's the model. My official pick is the first 5 under in Reds versus Pirates. We went over all of them. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Producer Cohen, I assume we got to restart the stream again. Unfortunately, having a little bit of technical difficulty. So what we're going to do is I would recommend before everyone leaves, right? Because we're about to welcome on all the different contributors. Make sure you follow us on Twitch right now. If everyone could press that follow button, because then you'll get an alert when we go live every single time we do this, Monday through Friday. You get an alert every single time we do this, again, Monday through Friday. So we're going to restart the stream and come back in 30 seconds. And then we're going to start talking to all the different contributors. So if you want to hear from Krabs, DeGen, Tomas, who's up like 30 units on the season. Who else is coming on today? Who we got? Mid-Major, who had a 3-unit bomb last stream. Ollie's coming on. Ollie 1 unit, who's always great too. A lot of good cappers are going to come on, give their picks. Not just me. Maybe Aram. We're expecting Aram. He gave picks, so we'll go over his picks if he doesn't come. I assume he's going to come. He told me he'd come. So we're going to end the stream, and we'll be back on in 30 seconds. So make sure you hit that follow button so you'll get an alert when we come right back on.